our divine service today. The wonderful Melanie and Simon Blythe, who will be hosting our service. As I said before, Melanie will be working in the trance states for the address. Simon, I believe, is taking the reading. So without further ado, could I ask for the opening prayer, please?
Sure. Great and eternal Spirit, we thank you for this time that we can share with one another. An opportunity to be aware of you, Great Spirit, and to be aware of those who inspire and guide us from other realms of life. We ask that this morning we may each feel that compassion and love that comes to us from the spirit world, that we may each feel one another's companionship. We ask that during this gathering, we will each receive healing according to our need. And we ask that later on, when we go about our normal Sunday business, we do so with a spring in our step. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mel. Beautiful. And now, if you'd like to join in and recite the Lord's Prayer, please. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And also, we can now join in and say the 7 principles of spiritualism. The fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, communion of spirits and the ministry of angels, the continuous existence of the soul, personal responsibility, compensation and retribution hereafter for all the good and evil deeds done on earth, and eternal progress open to every soul. Thank you. So we now will go to Simon, I believe, for your reading, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, and part of the reason for this is you've heard Melanie's own voice. You will hear my voice because male voices will come out of Melanie. So it's to show there's no fakery or trickery. So good morning, friends. Life is what we make it. We can be kind, compassionate, and loving, or alternatively envious, cruel, and self-absorbed. Humankind is in a pickle of their own making. In our arrogance, we think we're the only species that matters. We think we rule the earth, but earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, this pandemic, and climate change suggest otherwise. What inheritance have we left for our children and grandchildren, or even ourselves when we reincarnate? This change is going to affect generations to come. Ask what you can do to help and do it. Walk more, use your car less, and when it's safe to do so, try and use public transport more. Recycle, but buy ethically and environmentally in the first place. We can all make a difference. And those that can, please send out healing, say prayers, and help the earth now. Our society is skewed towards consuming without thought that goods travel from the other side of the world. And you have to ask yourself, is this sustainable? We need to connect or reconnect with the rhythms of the natural seasons, open our eyes and see the damage that's being done. Animal species are disappearing at an alarming rate. Plastic infests our oceans. Our spiritual lives are out of balance in many cases. We need to walk our talk and take action. Let's rediscover our true natures and turn our compassion, our love, to what needs to be done. We have the divine within us. Let us find it, search our hearts, and think about our own actions and our footprint on this beautiful world of ours. God bless you.
Thank you, Simon. And now we'll move into our hymn for this morning while Melanie is preparing. So, Maestro, if you would, please. Quick word from our sponsors there. If you fancy a burger, now's the time to order it. Without further ado, Simon, Melanie, will hand over to you totally. If you wish to make the speaker the sole view on your screens, you can do so in the top right-hand corner under the view button and select speaker view. So I'll now remain quiet and over to Simon and Melanie. Thank you.
Welcome, my friend.
Oh, hello. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to you, Lawrence. We have not as yet met one another, but I am aware of you, my friend, and we are very grateful for this opportunity of communicating with you. Sadly, there are people in the world who are unaware of the fact that we continue as human beings after physical death. And indeed, it is not only the humans that continue to exist. I'm sure that there are many here in this space who have pets, furry friends, scaled ones maybe also. And of course, these beings continue to live after their physical body has ceased to function. I wonder how many of you consider the afterlife of the rainforest, trees in your local park. I wonder how many of you consider the continuation of life for the shrubs and flowers in your garden. Maybe you don't think about that. We often speak about the earth and how the planet is alive. And I suppose that generally people think about the planet being alive by thinking about the humans that live upon it, fly above it, swim in its waters, etc. And many, of course, will consider the flora and fauna. They will think about the beautiful tigers, lions, and what have you. But when we talk about the earth being alive, we're not just talking about the creatures that you see with your eyes. We're not talking about the ones that you see on your television sets or in your zoological gardens. We're talking about the body that is the earth herself. Now, when I was in your world, not so long ago, I was a rector, an Orthodox Christian, but I was very aware of other forms of life because I spent some interesting years in Africa. And I came upon many, I suppose you'd call them heathens, people who practiced a life that was very closely associated with nature. by necessity, frankly, people who cultivated what was there, ate what was there, and did enough when they were fortunate to feed themselves and their families. But by interacting with these lovely people, trying very hard to bring Jesus to them and failing abysmally, I have to say, instead I learned a great deal. And I learned that it is perfectly possible when in material form, when in your body as you are at the moment, to communicate with all sorts of interesting things. Well, I'm sure that many people joke about tree huggers. I certainly found it an interesting concept. But when I realized that there was life within that tree and an awareness of me, that made me stand back and think. And since being without my body in the spiritual realm, I have encountered tree spirits and all sorts of things that I had no awareness actually continued to live after their body died. And when you think about it, why on earth wouldn't all life continue if it wasn't true? It would be like saying that God is imperfect. We know that God is omnipresent, that God exists and is present in everything and in everyone and in every when. Therefore, there cannot be anywhere where God is not present. Please understand, and I never believed this when incarnate either, please understand that God isn't an elderly gentleman parked in the clouds. I think the term that many spiritualists and spiritual people use, the term energy, satisfies me when I think about God. If there is nowhere that God isn't, alternatively, rather than using the double negatives, that God is present everywhere stands to reason, doesn't it, logically? That God, an eternal being, is everything and within everything. Therefore, nothing can cease to be. Nothing. It is the arrogance of humanity to consider that only we are eternally living. My goodness, how pompous are we? So when one realizes that everything is alive at different levels of consciousness, admittedly, but able to communicate. Recent science has proved this with regard to trees, that they communicate with one another. When one realizes this, surely as spiritual people, and I'm not remotely bothered by which religious or non-religious title you give yourself, it's irrelevant in my view. surely as spiritually conscious people, we have to realize that all life, wherever it may be, in whatever dimension, deserves our compassion and our love, our care. And we cannot treat any form of life cruelly. I know my mother used to say to me, son, please treat others as you would wish to be treated. And that is the teaching of Jesus that I took very much to heart, which is why I chose the path that I did when in the material form. We come to an understanding as well that once we see that all life matters, there comes an understanding that the interaction that exists between all life is constant. Don't get it into your mind that you can pop off into a room somewhere and decline to be alive and decline to be connected, is that word again, energetically with all life. Don't think you can do that. Don't think that you can prevent your actions or inactions from affecting, touching, not only those around you, but those everywhere. That is, in one sense, a little scary, because you think, oh my goodness, if everything I think, say, and do affects somebody else, my goodness me, I had better watch what I think, say, and do, as I don't want to hurt anybody. Of course, if you are somebody with that knowledge and your energy is dark, then whoopee. Oh, I can hurt people just by thinking about it. But you know, the universe is rather magnificent, because you are not separate to anybody, as I've just said. And as many, many, many teachers have said over thousands of years, have said the same thing. I'm not saying anything different here or controversial. But you are one with everything. Therefore, when you do something that is harmful, it will affect you just as much. And if you decide that you're going to be splendid in life, you're going to be unconditionally loving and whatnot, solely with the intention, it's a magic word, that solely with the intention, I'm going to be good because I don't want to be hurt. That won't work, because your behavior will have condition attached to it. And that isn't the action of the deepest part of you, the godly part of you, your soul. That is how we all connect through the soul, through soul level. And if you are not able to communicate with your own soul, if you're not awake enough, and crikey, it takes a lot of waking to be in that frame of ability. If you're not able to feel at that depth, then the things that you are creating with your action, your inaction, your thoughts, your words, will seep through to you, through the various layers of your being. I will use some more New Age terminology. Through your auric field, through your subtle bodies, through these external layers of you, because you are not enclosed in your physical body. And if you don't feel the results of your actions within this space outside of your physical self, it will come right into that very final layer of yourself, your physical body, and say, hello, are you listening? And that is something that you have read out a little while ago about compensation, retribution. You might think, well, crikey, oh, what sort of God is there out there who makes me hurt myself? There isn't one that does that. We do it to ourselves. I'm going to withdraw and someone else will communicate. God bless you. Oh. Oh. Good morning.
Good morning, welcome, my friend.
Oh, thank you very much, my brother. It is very nice to be here. I wonder if we have stirred anybody yet. We hope so. That is our intention after all. My name is White Owl, and I see a few people I know. That's good. Would anybody like to ask a question yet? You're very welcome to. I'm happy to continue to chat until people are ready, and it may not be me who answers, it may well be somebody else. It is nice to see people that we're working with. Very nice. So, my dear friend, Brother John's been speaking about karma effectively, talking about intention to a certain extent as well, and that is something that is very, very important. If your intention is only to help, there is obviously a difference between somebody who causes harm unintentionally to somebody who does it deliberately. Sadly, there are people in the world who do deliberately cause harm to others, not realizing that they are harming themselves. and people who do not consider the needs of the planet, people who spend their lives with their head in the sand, thinking, well, if I don't see it, it's not there. Unfortunately, there is so much knowledge in the world now. Science is gradually catching up with the spirit, knowing things that we have been saying in various forms that are appropriate to the level of development in society. So, do we have any questions yet?
Yes, we've got one from Sue, I think it is.
Yes.
If you could unmute, Sue, and ask your question.
Thank you. I'd like to ask about what advice could you give to everybody to play their role in raising human consciousness so that we can move forward and create a new world in which to live that is more fair and equal and balanced for all beings? Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. Very, very nice question indeed. Well, first of all, we have to realize that we are one. There is a misconception amongst human beings that we are all separate. This isn't true at all. When people speak about oneness, sometimes they speak about people having a spark of the divine within. We have more than a spark, we are the fire. So first of all, needs to come the awareness that we are one, and this can be experienced through meditation. Sadly, a lot of people do not wish to meditate. Meditation has a bad press. Whenever there is a comedy television program and somebody talks about meditation, invariably there will be somebody seated on the floor in a cross-legged position, usually somebody who obviously doesn't do it because their knees are so high, sitting with an apparent mudra and probably chanting nonsense. This is, I think, probably the way that most human beings try to ignore the truth, by injecting ridicule. A lot of people don't want to do spiritual things because they think that they will be bullied for it. So meditation and spiritual practice needs to become more mainstream generally. I am aware that there are some schools, particularly in the Far East, where meditation is indeed part of the daily curriculum. So bringing spirituality, not religion, spirituality and meditation, not just for the spiritual senses, but also for physical health, bringing that into the education systems of our world would go a great distance in helping us as a race of beings to come together. It is only when we are in an altered state of consciousness that comes from meditation that human beings begin to understand the true nature of life. The true nature of life is not acquiring things. It is not capitalism. It is not materialism. It is not communism. It is not political. It is not religious. Being in the state of mind where there is a freeing of that mind by controlling it effectively, by stopping it from running off to think about what we should be doing later, the jobs that I have to do. That would be enormously helpful, and that knowledge would permeate through our children out into adulthood. That is something that happened in my lifetime when I was a boy, when I was in your world as a Lakota Sioux, that we knew that the spiritual life was indeed the real life. Nowadays, in modernity, and certainly in the West, there is this idea that real life is academia, it is material acquisition, which couldn't be further from the truth. As the Buddhists will tell you, and the Christians will tell you, when you pass, you don't take any of those things with you. You know, it doesn't matter whether you have a degree at university, whether you can speak 14 different languages, whether you are a music mogul, whether you have millions of pounds, doesn't make any difference whatsoever. It is what you have done within that soul awareness. That is what matters. And if children are not taught about it, how, bless them, are they to know? So that's one thing that we in the spirit world as guides would very much like to see more of an involvement of children in spiritual practice. And I'm aware that I'm speaking within a spiritualist environment. And I'm also aware that COVID is happening. But it should be possible for young children to be included in spiritualist practice. You might think, well, goodness me, that's a bit dangerous, isn't it, talking to dead people? Well, I would say that most children are very aware of spirit. It is the grown-ups who drive it away from them. Many, many children follow spirit people around their bedrooms with their eyes before they can even speak. But because that is not included in their daily life, and when they do talk about, oh, I've seen grandma, or I've seen granddad who's dead, then quite often there is fear associated with that, and parents will tell the child that they are making it up. This is another thing that would greatly help in bringing harmony to the world, and that is stopping this fear about death. Death is a taboo subject, certainly, again, in the West. And the West seems to have most control over the planet, although that's changing. But what is the point of being frightened of something that is inevitable? It is part of life, and this is something that all human beings need to comprehend. Animals understand it fully. If any of you have had a sick cat, for example, they will try to take themselves off to die, just as their wild brothers and sisters would do, just as an elephant might do. So teaching people, talking about death and helping them to prepare for it, so that however they pass, they know that when their body ceases to be, they will continue, and there is no need to be afraid. that is another thing that could be brought into society, the awareness of this. And then ethics. Unfortunately, because there are so many different ways of practicing spirituality, people argue about it. Oh, you can only live after death if you believe in this particular manner. I have to tell you that I am not a Christian. I am, I suppose you'd say, shamanic in your modern language. That isn't a word that belongs to my society. I have to tell you that I am most certainly not dead. My body may be, but I have continued after my body died. And I do talk to Jesus quite regularly. Very nice chap. But whilst there are these disharmonies between religions, whilst there are religions, frankly, it's going to be difficult to bring people together. However, of course, people are alive on this earth plane of yours who are responsible for large groups of people and their minds and their indoctrination within religious establishments, who are broad-minded, who are wanting to bring different faiths together. They'll still say that theirs is the right one, of course, but they do wish to bring people together. Sadly, it is not only religion that causes division, which is ridiculous, as it is meant to be something that brings unconditional, compassionate love. While there is division, that doesn't exist. Politics. Oh, shall we not go there?
We have another question.
And I will just finish what I'm saying, but thank you very much, my brother. Politics and also the enormous chasm of difference there is in wealth. Whilst we have people on the earth plane who are starving to death, and I'm not talking about countries distant from your own, whilst we have this completely fixable imbalance in that respect, of course, things are going to continue to be separate. People who have money have power and generally become very attached to their money, to their things. They become fearful about losing them. And here we have fear again, which is in fact the driving force behind most disharmony, the fear of losing control and power. But you know, the greatest power in the universe is unconditional love, and it's free. I hope that helps you. Thank you very much for your question.
Right, I think Lawrence has a question.
Fire away, dear boy.
Hello, White Owl. How nice to meet you once again.
Thank you.
Could you just help me on a little bit of direction here? From this time of COVID where the world stopped, I was becoming aware of similar energies sort of encircling the globe. The same thought was coming from different countries. We were hearing the same wording about different things, but I was just fascinated that this one thought encircled this globe for the time. Could you give any sort of clarity on that process, or indeed if it was just my physical mind creating a picture out of coincidence? Thank you.
Very interesting question indeed. And I'm going to approach it from the perspective of a global thought, rather than talking about COVID, although we will do in a moment. But this awareness that a lot of people are thinking the same thing, the same inspiration is reaching disparate minds, apparently. It just goes to prove that, in fact, we are one. I've tried over the years to explain to people about this oneness by using things that are perhaps a little less painful to consider than COVID. How is it that although we have different words to describe it, how is it that all those who see recognize a tree? So there is nobody on the earth plane who says, well, that's not a tree, it's a, I don't know, an ujima flip or something. It's not a tree, it doesn't have bark, doesn't have leaves. There is a collective consciousness that human beings are a part of. We are actually beings who like to gather, even when we are those people who like to spend a lot of time alone. There is still a need to gather in some way or another. And at this time of COVID, when sensible people are keeping themselves to themselves, there is still a need to produce something like Zoom in order for people to see one another and communicate. But on a spiritual level, communication still occurs. It occurs very, very naturally in sleep state. But as a medium, you know that communication comes to you when you are in awakened state as well. There is a misconception in spiritualism that the only communication that will come to a medium is from discarnate human spirits. That is incorrect. Communication can come to you from animal spirits, for example, and that should make sense to people. If you've ever become aware of somebody's pet when delivering evidence of survival, and you've had to say, well, I've got your whippet, Jack Russell, elephant, horse, whatever, when you deliver that, and if you are honest about it, you will know that there is a mind in that animal talking to you. And it doesn't just say woof, arf, neigh. It says many things. It expresses love. It expresses self-awareness. It expresses concern primarily, usually, for its human. So if you can accept that you can communicate with discarnate animal spirits, then it shouldn't be too much of a leap to realize that you can communicate with other aspects of yourself. So you can communicate with the part of you that exists permanently. So I don't know what term you would like to use for that, higher self, spirit, soul, whatever. Doesn't matter, it's the same thing. A tree is a tree. But you can also communicate with a collective consciousness that belongs to an aspect of life in the material world. So let's talk a little bit about this fear word. Fear is a very powerful emotion that effectively creates its own voice. And I'm sure people are aware of it. It's the voice that says, well, I really hate needles. I know that I've got to have a blood test next week. And the voice reminds you constantly about the needle. And it doesn't matter how much you say to it, oh, go away. I don't need to think about it until next week. Fear creates its own power, and it will stimulate part of your mind to keep on about it. This is where Buddhism is so useful, because you can learn to quash that. But if enough people are afraid, that fear becomes bigger, larger. This happens with all emotion. It almost becomes sentient. It isn't. It isn't. But it becomes a force and a power. And this is something that psychic people are able to tune into. And that energy will permeate that which it touches. So just as when you psychometrize an object and you read the vibration, the energy of that object, it is the emotion that life has experienced, human beings, whatever, and have permeated that object with this energy that gives rise to something that is almost like this voice within. So if enough people become convinced of the fact, it generates a power that any psychic can feel, hear, sense. But bear in mind that psychic ability is natural. It isn't something that just a few have. Everybody has it. It's part of human and animal and tree and whatever makeup. It's part of everything. Just some people are Mozart rather than chopsticks players. And if enough people feel it, then it becomes almost like a mass hysteria. I'm sure you've heard that terminology, so that, if you like, is the scientific way of saying it, that there is sufficient mass. That energy becomes powerful enough, and then people think it's true. If enough people say to you, you're fat, you're ugly, you're tall, you're thin, if enough people say it, it becomes an energy within your auric field. And if you're not careful, you can believe it. And if a psychic, it becomes aware of it, they then make it bigger again. It becomes repeated and repeated and repeated like an affirmation. And this is what has happened very much with these conspiracy theories. Now, I apologize in advance for the people that I am going to offend. You are very free to leave the Zoom room. The people who have created the vaccines for COVID-19, their intention is to save life. They have worked incredibly hard to produce medication to try and save everybody's lives. There is nothing in these vaccines that is going to deliberately harm you or inadvertently do so. If you just happen to be a bit allergic, that's how it is. If you have had COVID and you didn't realize it because you thought it was a snivel and you had just slight effects from it, or you were without symptom, you are more likely to have a reaction to the vaccination. But let me tell you, these people who created the vaccine are inspired. You are not being controlled by dark forces through the vaccine. But if you believe that these vaccines are dark, it is because you are being influenced by the dark yourself. And you need to consider that. You have the right to choose not to have the vaccine. Of course you do. You have the right to do whatever you want. It is your life. But you do not have the right to try and influence other people not to take it, including your children. Bear in mind that they are only your children for a short while. They are spirit beings who've come to the earth to live. Something else I'm going to say that may offend is that the original infection of this virus was darkly made. It was not an accident. It was an accident that it found its way out of the laboratory, but it was created deliberately to cause harm. Do not compound this by believing that you will be harmed by the treatment to help you, please. If there are any other questions, thank you, Lawrence.
I can't see any more questions.
Have
No.
I disturbed people?
I don't know. You hopefully made them think.
If anybody wants to ask another question, then please feel free. But I'm going to withdraw because I see that I have disturbed some people, so I need to work with the energy in the room, and Marie-Therese will come and speak to you. So God bless you.
Welcome.
Et bonjour mes amis. Hello, my name is Marie-Therese and I am a nun from Belgium. I am not French, Lawrence. I am Belgian. And yes, I do wear a wimple. Yes, very much.
She's laughing.
That's good. Would anyone like to speak to me? Perhaps I am a little less frightening. You are very welcome to speak to me if you would like to. But if not, I will continue. It is up to you.
Nothing at the moment.
Then may I continue? And I would like to speak to you about intention. It was mentioned very briefly a few moments ago. The intention that you have behind your activity is very important. It affects the emotion, the drive behind everything that you do. It is also very important to look inside yourself to really ascertain what is your intention, because it can be very easy to delude ourselves and to believe that what we are doing is from a selfless place. Very, very difficult not to be selfish at times. It it is also important that people do things for their own benefit as well, but not excessively so. So it is very much about balance. So sometimes people are only intent in doing things for their own benefit entirely. They want to acquire things, they want to acquire power, they are attached to certain activity, perhaps they are addicted to some things, some behaviors, and all they can think about is their own needs. Then there are people who are the complete opposite, and you may think, well, then isn't that the right way to be the complete opposite of that? No. There are those who give their entire life completely and utterly for the benefit of others, but to the point where they do not care for themselves at all. These might be people who do not eat properly because they're too busy giving everything to everyone else. They are rushing about, using all of their precious life, that time, for other people, forgetting that they need time to contemplate, to meditate, to sleep, to rest, to walk, to be in nature, to do those very simple things, perhaps to bathe, perhaps to wear clothing that is comfortable, not necessarily luxurious, but serviceable. There are people who are carers, for example, and they care for disabled relatives, and their whole life is put away for later, and before they know, they are also elderly. This, I think, is perhaps an example of the imbalance that there is in society, that there is not enough support for those who have to care in this way. Then there are those who deliberately expend all of their time and energy helping other people because they think it makes them look good. Or indeed that they get such an excitement. I think the word rush is what you might use nowadays. They get such an enormous joy from it that they become addicted to that. It is possible to become addicted to prayer, to meditation, to spiritual practice. And it is all about a lack of balance in one's life. And the intention behind the behavior goes from being, this is my natural state, to be loving. This comes from my soul. My soul loves unconditionally. That is the vibration, the core of my being. That is what I do. It is just how human beings should be living. We go from that into, oh, look at me. I am so glorious. See my aura shine. To those who forget to shine their aura ever and are just involved in taking, using, manipulating, lying, and doing all the terrible things that human beings are so capable of. Intention. If you rise in the morning and your intention is to be the best you can be today, that's fabulous. And if throughout the day you fall, but you know you have fallen, that is fantastic. But if you spend the rest of the day ignoring the fall, I did not fall. How dare you think that I fell? You're making it worse and worse and worse. Whereas acceptance of who and what we are and how we live is so tremendously important. And you know, we do not have to do these wondrous things loudly. They can be done very quietly. We don't all have to be leaders. We can just be ourselves. What is that? As I've said, you are beautiful, balanced beings, eternally living, never ceasing to be, therefore never losing the opportunity of being wonderful. There is always the next step. There is always another opportunity, something else. Oh, didn't do so well today. Forgive me. I'll try better now, not tomorrow. I'm not going into this room that was spoken about earlier. I'm going to hide in there and I'm going to pretend that I haven't done anything wrong. And I will bury myself in things that help me forget. I will watch this television program. I will go into deep meditation and be very, very high and spiritual. I'm going to drink this alcohol. I'm going to smoke this. I'm going to beat myself up. No. Acceptance. Accept. Forgive. Move on. This is something that I would really recommend for life in general. Accept. Accept yourself. I am flawed. I am faulty. I make mistakes. I accept. That person has hurt me. I accept that. I accept that that is where they are on their path. Perhaps they didn't even realize that when they said this, that they would not speak to me anymore. When they said this, maybe they thought it was the kindest thing to do. Maybe their life has been so difficult that they couldn't do anything else but say those things to you, or strike you, or abuse you. It is their journey, it is their issue. What they have done to you has nothing to do with you, it is to do with them. Accept that that is where they are. Accept this is where I am. And forgive. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with what you have done or what they have done. I forgive you. I forgive myself. I hurt, but that's okay. You did that. You hurt me. You hurt this country. You hurt these people. It's not okay because you hurt people, but it's okay that you are there right now. And I will send you healing, not because I am better than you, not because you are worse than me. I am not thinking that. Just because despite where we both are in relation to each other, you are part of me. You are my brother, my sister. You are a fellow being, a fellow traveler upon this life path, whether you are now without physical form, whether you are a spirit being, or whether you are still in the body. It matters not. We are one. And I forgive that behavior. I don't understand it, but it is as it is. And then move on. Become mindful of this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment, not that one or that one that is to come. The past is gone. That moment has ceased to be. You cannot affect it in any way. It has happened. It has its effect. The cause is there, the effect is here, and that has already gone. Move on. Don't live there anymore. Don't give that part of your journey any more power. Instead, realize that within this pain, within that agony, is an opportunity to grow. Even if it is just, I will never, never do that to anyone, ever. It doesn't matter what anybody does to me, what they say, what they take away, what they steal, how they hurt me. I will never do that. Even if that is just the one lesson, the one thing you accept and move on with. And when you feel inside yourself and you feel the pain that you had, let it be that you are never the cause of that within anyone else. And also that when someone comes to you and is clearly feeling that pain themselves, go inside and just remember, ah yes, I remember that. I remember how that felt. But I have to dig deep to remember, but the compassion that I have acquired for you as a result of their behavior to me has given me a precious jewel. It has given me something that I can give to you now. I can listen to you. I feel for you because I know I have had this. I understand. And you're not saying it in a way to belittle that person's suffering. You don't have to say what your suffering is. Instead, you just allow your heart to open. You allow your love to flow because you are one. So inadvertently, probably, the one who has nearly destroyed you has brought you to a place of creativity. From destruction comes creativity. This is the flow of the divine. Divine energy is the only thing that can create. The dark can destroy, but not completely, as the ashes are still there for the phoenix to rise from.
We've had a message to draw it to a close.
Thank you very much. May we, on behalf of the spirit world, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity of communicating with you. We wish that your lives are beautiful. Que les anges vous bénissent, mes enfants. Merci. God bless you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And apologies for calling you French. Simon, you may want to just turn your volume down at your end while Mel regains and recovers energy. All right, wonderful. Thank you all for joining today. I hope and trust that you took something away from all those different schools of thought. It's absolutely beautiful and uplifting. Huge thanks to Melanie and Simon for their input today. For without them, this wouldn't have happened. Absolutely beautiful day. As I said, the format of today's service is going to be just slightly different as to the norm, whatever the norm is. Just very briefly, next Sunday, our divine service will be taken by Anne-Marie Hogan at 10:45 on Zoom. Room opens around about 10:30-ish. If you'd like to keep up to date with everything that's going on in the church, please visit and like our church Facebook page or our YouTube channel. And this afternoon, we have another wonderful treat. The lovely Mark Stone, who is in the room today, will be taking our live service here within the church, which is streamed live to view only on our church Facebook page. 3 p.m. GMT live on the church Facebook page and later uploaded to our YouTube channel. If we could go back to Melanie's looking a little bit more like Melanie now, which is lovely.
Hello, hello.
Hello, darling. Lovely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What a great idea that was last night. So thank you. Brilliant. Absolutely loved it. And thank you, Simon, for your input. Absolutely great. All right. Wish you a blessed day. If you are able to do the closing prayer, absolutely great. If not, I'll quite happily do it for you. Entirely up to you, my darling. Or Simon can do it, as I was just seeing him grab the microphone.
Just be nice, but, so friends, if you could just join me in the brief closing prayer. Great Spirit, we thank you for the ability to meet together like this with Zoom, something that was probably unimaginable barely a year ago. It's fantastic that people can connect together during such a challenging time. We ask, please, for a healing and blessing to go to each participant here this morning, and thank you for the inspiration of Spirit and guides last night that made this possible, and for the flexibility of Lawrence and the centre. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all again. Sorry to have drawn you to a close. Unfortunately, we need to start concentrating on our next function of the day. You could sit and listen to you forever.